Alright, so in this tutorial we'll create some texture brushes, but first I want to show you how you can program a hotkey for an action that you do a lot. Like, for example, in this lesson we've been going to the Edit menu and choosing Define Brush Preset quite often. If you go to the Edit menu, go down to Keyboard Shortcuts, you'll get this window. Now, as long as Shortcuts is set to application menus, the options here are the same ones that are up here. So you just have to find the menu that your item is in, open it up, and then scroll down so you see what we've been doing. So there's Define Brush Preset. A little box will pop up here. If you click in the box and then hold down a couple of the command keys and hit a letter, so I'm going to hold down Option Command P. If there's nothing already using that control, it will go to that control. So actually, you know what? I'm going to do Command Option A on mine, and if it gets a little warning like this, for example, you can override that by clicking Accept, but you first want to read down here and see if this is a command that you will actually use. If it is, you don't want to override it. So my Command Option A, which I had already set before, otherwise it would have a warning, was something that I never did anyway, so I'm going to hit Accept, and then I'm good to go. So now if I grab my lasso tool and make a selection around the shape I want to turn into a brush and hit Command Option A, that's the same as going to the menu and choosing that Define preset. So I'm just going to circle these each and turn them into a brush head. Isn't that just so much faster? You don't have to do it that way. You're certainly welcome to do it the same way we've been doing it all lesson. So now I'm grabbing my brush tool and I can see these ones down here at the bottom. And just like my other stuff, I'm going to create a new layer, hit DX to get my white in the front, and then Option Delete to fill my new layer, and then I'm going to make a new layer again that I'm going to brush on. Alright, so let's edit some of these brushes. Texture stuff, unlike patterns, patterns need to be regular and predictable, but textures are almost the opposite, where if you're going to use it for a brush, it needs to be pretty random, because if it is regular at all, it's going to start looking kind of like a worm, and just not very attractive and definitely not very functional. So usually I start with the brush tip shape, and I increase my spacing a little bit, but not necessarily by a whole bunch. If you decide to flip X and flip Y, oh, you know what, that's not a jitter. Let's not do that here. We'll do that somewhere else. So here I've increased my spacing, then click up on Shape Dynamics, and if yours came out like mine did, take the pen pressure and turn it off if your little preview is going from thin to thick. And I'm going to do a size jitter just a little bit, and angle jitter maybe not. I don't really like the way that's looking. But I will do the flip X and flip Y, and what that does is it takes your brush and every couple of stamps it'll flip it either upside down or from side to side. So hopefully as I come in here and start brushing, now that looks much more like a usable grungy texture brush. It's a very different look than what it was before. And you can keep playing with this to get it exactly how you want. You can play with adding some texture to it. That'll do a whole other thing. If you come into your textures up here and choose one, and remember you can load more over here, it will put sort of the grayscale of that on top of your brush and try and interweave those two. You can play with these and come up with some really fun options. I'm going to uncheck that and actually just go down to transfer, since that's the one we've kind of been using, and I will do my opacity jitter and try that again. Okay, that looks pretty usable. That's a good texture brush. So I'm going to say new brush preset and call this grunge texture. So now our grunge texture is down here at the bottom. The last option I'm going to show you is dual brush, and you need to begin a dual brush by selecting a really a texture brush to start with. So think of dual brush, you choose the texture one first. So click on the texture one in your preset panel and then click on the word dual brush. Scroll up till we see these top couple of circles and click on one of those. And if you increase the size, what you're actually seeing is this texture brush is getting painted inside of this brush. So if I increase my size so I can see the edges but not quite, you know what I mean, if you go too big it might as well just be the other brush. But to keep it in that sort of thing, now when I paint with it, it's a more controlled paint. So dual brush takes the first brush that you clicked on here in your preset panel and puts it in the tip shape of whatever you've picked in here in the dual brush setting, and you can save that as a new brush preset. Alright, one last texture brush, because this is actually one that I tend to use quite a bit. First off, I'm going to clear away my mess right there and then hide those two layers. Let's work with this cloudy one. So if I look over here in my presets, there's the cloudy one, and if yours ever becomes gray like this, it just means you're not on the brush tool. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. No wonder. Brush tip shape. Click on brush tip shape. So with this one, like most of the other ones we've looked at, increase the spacing so it's not just a solid line. And then I would come into Shape Dynamics, which is sort of my go-to, and mix up some of these jitters. I would make sure that the control drop down is turned off unless I do have a pen, in which case you can mess with that. And just try playing with these so that it becomes a lot more random. And what we're going for is something that you could actually use as to add fog to somewhere. So you do want it to be controllable, so you don't want it to be like crazy out there scatter, because then it'll look like little popcorn clouds. But you do want to have some randomness in there. Alright, so before I save this, let's go test it out. I have this image of kind of a creepy looking woods, and I'm going to create a new layer and grab white, or maybe even a little bit gray as my color, and start clicking away. You can see this is quite big, so I'm going to make my brush smaller. And you can play with, you know, the opacity and the flow if you want to for something like this. So yeah, that's working pretty good. If I wanted to make sure that this tree looked like it was standing out from the fog, I would actually grab my eraser and come in and erase some of this white layer. But all I know for now is my brush is working the way I wanted it to, so I'm going to get my brush, come back to my brush panel, and choose New Brush Preset, Fog Brush. So like most times when I am making brushes, once I've created a brush that has that random bit in it, if I don't need the tip anymore, I'll just come in here and get rid of these. Now you can do that in the Brush Preset Manager that we've looked at before, or you could use a shortcut in this window by holding down Option. You get a little set of scissors, and that will get rid of any of these ones that you click on. So I'm only clicking on the ones that aren't set up with settings. You can tell because it's just a straight line. And there they are. There's a few texture brushes.